Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Tom. I'm one of two leads for the local pilot in Trafford, and I've got the distinct pleasure of either positively enthusing you or confusing you for the next about 5 to 10 minutes in terms of what we've been up to on a local level through the local pilot. But what I also want to express is that this is quite a challenge because in some ways I'm also representing the other 9 sort of local pilot areas. So I'm going to be looking around the room to my colleagues and they're either going to be giving me daggers or just nodding along whether I'm getting it right. Primarily what I want to try and do is I want to bring the local pilot to life and make it a reality for you. And in doing so, I want to share with you the work that's happened since July last year and kind of really express how it's making us think and act differently. And when we say that, we actually mean it. We're not just coining some nice little phrase. We are thinking differently. And I think from a Trafford perspective, and I think this is probably borne out across the other 9 areas as well, is that those principles have now become the lens through which we see all of our work. Going back to the point that Kate made, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. It makes it very difficult for us to operate in a slightly different context. So what I want to do is also bring in my co-presenter for this part of the presentation. So I'm going to introduce you to a resident from the area that we're working in, which is in Partington. Just show of hands. Has anyone been to Partington in Trafford? It's nice. Don't be shy. It's a lovely place. I live there. Cool. So there's some people in the room who know Partington and some people that don't. So going back to sort of the formation of the concept of the local pilot in terms of getting to the people that need it most. Partington and Carrington is that area in Trafford. It's a geographically isolated place, one road in, one road out. The only method of transport or public transport is buses. If you're lucky, one might come on time and get you to where you want to be on time. There's high levels of unemployment and there's some unique conditions around health inequalities in the area. But the most important thing, or the most important thing to express to you, is that people that live there are extremely passionate about making a change in their community. So I'm going to say less now. I'm going to let Paul speak, and then I'm going to talk to you a bit more about why we've had a conversation with Paul. Hopefully, technology works. So I just got to push the button.
My name's Paul Sellers and I have lived in Partington all my life. It was a nice little village. Everyone knew everyone and we all got on with each other like. But now it's getting bigger and bigger every year. It's been built on and there's not enough facilities for the people who live around there. We used to have a couple of bowling greens. We haven't got one now. There used to be sports on a Sunday. I think that's dwindled down, Sunday leagues. But now there's hardly anything for my age to do really. Yeah, I used to be a warehouseman and we unloaded containers, loaded containers. I didn't see the need to go to a gym or anything, so I was quite active at work. I got caught bronchitis. It's turned into asthma. I started having pains in my hands and in my arms. I had to go see the company doctor and he said, right, we'll have to sign you off work. I was a bit active at the beginning, but now I soon get out of breath and it takes me a long time to do a lot of things. I stay indoors mainly most of the time. I do a lot of drawing for grandkids and children and all. Put the names on pieces of paper and draw cartoon characters. I've got all my stuff upstairs. What I need. I've got a radio, I've got a television. You know, you name it, it's up there because that's my living quarters. I've seemed to have gone downhill because I've not been as active and one thing leads to another. Like I said, I suffer with panic attacks and I got anxiety. I won't go into crowded places on my own because I want to get straight out. Like I'll say to to myself, oh, I can't cope in here, I'll have to get out. Well, I would never go into a gym now because of my health and all that. And it's too many look at me people, yeah. So, well, if I was to travel outside Partington, I'd go to Altrincham or Urmston. So I'm not guaranteed to get the bus on time, so everything runs late. I know your trap because 2 weeks last Wednesday, I had an appointment in Urmston and no buses was running, so I had to cancel my appointment. I regularly go to the health centre to see the doctor, and he offered me, it was like an exercise class, but when I got there, it didn't seem my sort of thing. It was out of my comfort zone. I didn't actually start the classes. I just went for an interview at first, but he said, "Did you do this and do that?" I said, "No, I can't do that," because he didn't ask me any questions about my health or anything. If I could go and organise a swimming group for my age, I'd do it, and I think the wife would do it as well, actually. I will be willing to walk and all that. If to get activities going, I'll try them. By all means, I'll try them. Then, if it's good for me, I'll do it.
So, Paul is one of a series of voices that we've collected as part of our project, and primarily the point of having these voices is so we can share them with you, so you don't get to this information secondhand. You can understand what it's like to live through Paul's eyes and to see that lived experience of people in these communities. But what I would say is Paul is representative of a Paul in Brillington or a Paul in Glodwick, so you can begin to see that some of the experiences that we're trying to change and the behaviours that we're trying to change are relatively universal across GM and also different, which adds to the complexity of what we're trying to achieve. What Paul doesn't know is that he's also an evaluation tool. We've agreed to speak to Paul about every 6 months. The plan being that hopefully, if we're doing our job on the ground and making the differences that we intend to, we'll see Paul change or talk about things differently in his community. Primarily, if in 6 months' time we begin speaking to Paul in 12 months' time, we notice no difference, then we're failing. And I think that's a really important indicator of maybe the ways that we're doing things differently in terms of bringing people's voices and intent to the front of the project. So, what we know now, I think some of this may seem obvious, but it is clear from working in Partington and Carrington and speaking to leads from the other local pilot areas and the other local pilot areas nationally, is that we're still missing the mark on some of this stuff. And in terms of the conversations that we've had with people in Partington and Carrington, is that they've been really explicit that they need to trust us. There has been a systemic breakdown in trust between us as a stakeholder and more broadly us with the people that we're trying to affect, particularly the people in these communities. And I think primarily what we've got to understand is to build trust is something that takes a long time. And there's an important kind of aspect in terms of a quote that I like, in terms of we must seek to understand first. Because we've really got to understand Paul and all the other people that we've interviewed, their learned and lived experience. Here today, gone tomorrow doesn't work. So coming back to a point that Richard made, we had a big town hall meeting and we thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. We were going to have the killer conversation with this community and knock it out of the park. It all went quiet, and the first thing that someone said is, "Why the hell are you here having another conversation with us? We did this last week." And I think that's a key point that we need to consider, is having the right conversation with the right people. But this probably speaks more to short-termism. And I think primarily what we've got to think is that with the people that we need to affect change in most, is that we've got to go the distance. We've got to start with the end in mind. And without sounding like I'm coining phrases, it's got to be sustainable. Simply taking something to a community that isn't initiated by that community won't work. So for us to be successful, we need to do something different. So we need to develop a place-based approach. We've really got to understand and build trust with the people and places that will really engage people. And they may not be the places that you think are obvious, because there is deep and interesting and complex relationships between people and between places that make it really difficult for us to position and engage people and have the conversation to get them to come to us. So we've got to be prepared to take time to build these conversations. And we need to work with people. I think this is fundamental, and a fundamental piece of learning that's been expressed across all of the local pilot areas is that coming together and working with our communities is essential. If they don't recognise the people delivering those sessions, if they're not from that area, you're automatically and inadvertently creating a barrier to access. It's really important that you think very carefully about where and when you place activities and in what part of those communities. You can inadvertently dismiss a whole part of a community by placing an activity on one street compared to another. And I think primarily coming back to our point on trust, it's essential that we develop trusted relationships. We've been really, really lucky in Partington and Carrington that there was already a really well-trusted and established group of community leaders. Without them, we wouldn't have been as successful as we have been so far. We've worked with them, and with the kudos that they bring and the connection that they've had, we've been able to position ourselves alongside them to have the right conversations in the right time. So it's essential that we come together and we identify and use those people to connect with the people that we need to reach first. And finally, and these are just probably a few takeaway points, coming back to that place-based approach, we must focus on people and place and not product. It's essential that we take that asset-based community approach first. Your workforces, either they paid or voluntary, need to understand how to work in a place-based approach. In the communities that we're working in, the sports clubs, the volunteers, the people that live in that community and making a difference in the community have been absolutely crucial. And for us to move forward, they're going to need support to understand the way that we're working, understand the principles that we're working in, but understand how they can make a bigger and more impactful difference to people's lives. And lastly, which is my favourite bit, we've got to be willing to take a punt. We've done things in developing our local pilot that we wouldn't have normally touched with a barge pole. And primarily it's because, in some ways, the shackles are off, but in a positive way. We've got no targets to hit. We've got no outputs to drive to. We don't have to have a done when. What we can do is have genuine discussions with people about making incremental changes, be that with a specific individual, a group of people, or a whole community. What we've been enabled to do is have a very different conversation. And automatically that's changed the frame of the conversation that we're having with people on the ground. Because they don't see the normal shackles and the potential letdown that they've experienced in the past. And that's been crucial. And probably what I would finish on, and this is a bit of a big up to the guys for England and everyone else, is I genuinely feel the local pilot, or the feeling around the local pilots, is this is a potential sea change in terms of how we deliver outcomes that make people happy and healthy. And I genuinely feel that this is an opportunity for us all as a system, and by we I mean me, you, your communities, your neighbours, and all the things that enable or stop people from being happy and healthy. I think it's important that we recognise that this is a time for us to grasp an opportunity to make a real change. So I hope that's either positively enthused or confused you. I am relatively certain, without being certain, that what comes next will be a remedy for either confusion and a boon for diffusion. So thank you very much for listening.